Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest, Sarah Sawyer, who's here to share with us her new novel, The Undercurrent. So what happens when an overwhelmed new mother becomes obsessed by an unsolved disappearance of a young girl, only to uncover a shocking, dark secret within her own family? Well, today's guest is going to dive into just a little bit about this story. So Sarah Sawyer is an English teacher who lives and works at a boarding school in Western Massachusetts. She's a graduate of Amherst College and the Middlebury Breadloaf School of English. So welcome to the show, Sarah Sawyer.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. I mean, what a page turner. I have to just applaud you for the writing of this book. What inspired you to write this?
So it's always a funny thing to try to answer where something came from. But I have thought about it now a little bit, so I think I can answer. There's kind of two parts to it. One is that the summer before I started writing it, I had just reread the novel Madame Bovary, and I love that novel. I've read it a few times, and I was really struck after reading it this time by a thought, which was, what if that novel had been written by a woman? What if Emma Bovary were treated not as frivolous, but as halted in her creativity? In the novel, she tries to paint, she tries to do these creative acts that are sort of stifled. And that made me sort of have the germ of an idea. The other thing that happened around that time was that my daughter, who was about to be a sophomore at the time, had a pretty wild medical event with her thyroid. So if you can remember being a sophomore girl, she she lost 40 pounds and then gained 40 pounds in the span of about 6 months. And that made me really think about the experience of living in a female body and how you have to sort of adapt to these very different stages in your life. You're a little girl, then you're a teenager, you're a woman, you're a mother. There's all these kinds of things that happen. And it feels like this kind of radical transformation every time. So those were the two things I think that made the story appear in my mind, I think.
Well, it is a radical transformation. I think
Mhm.
science and culturally, we're kind of catching up to this idea that there are many stages a woman goes through.
Yeah,
It,
yeah.
it's just remarkable. And so, why don't you share with us? I don't want to give any spoilers away, but why don't you share with us a little bit about the story?
Sure. The Undercurrent is the story of a new mother named B who is really struggling with that particular transformation in her life. And she becomes obsessed with the case of a girl who went missing in her neighborhood when she was a child. She ends up traveling back home to Texas, and ostensibly she wants to reconnect with her mother and bring the baby to see her mother for the first time. But actually, she's sort of hoping that the missing girl's case will give her a sense of purpose and reignite her creativity. So there are three sort of voices in the novel. One is B, the other is her mother, Mary, and the other is her former neighbor across the street, a woman named Diana. And so the story unfolds without giving too much away, with B discovering definitely more than she bargained for in her hunt.
That's a good way of putting that.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a story we don't wanna give too much away. The writing is, I just loved it. It was so
Oh, thank you.
exceptional. And for those who are not overachievers like you, I mean, you wrote this novel while teaching high school English. I mean, my goodness, what a challenge that is. How did you even have time to do that?
I don't know. People ask me that all the time. I think just, I don't know. I mean, I think it's probably true that we can always find things to do, find time to do the things that we really want to do. In the fall, I coach field hockey and I teach and I have duty at night. So I don't do anything in the fall. But in the winter and in the spring, and then obviously in the summer, I have time in the afternoons. In the summer, I refuse to work in the summer because why be a teacher, right? And so I do have a lot of time then. So I'm not without time. It's just when I'm busy, I'm very busy.
I would say you are. And I want to touch on something that you mentioned a little bit ago. And it seems that there are these themes of motherhood within this book. It's a
Yeah.
central theme. So
Mhm.
how did your own experience as a mother shape the narrative?
Yeah, there are parts of B's description of being a new mother that, are sort of barely fictional, right? In the sense that when I had my son, I just was really amazed. I just could not believe that this was what women all over the world do all the time without a moment of complaint that my own mother did that for me. I literally could not believe how little I slept, how my time did not belong to me. I was just sort of like shocked. And I think that if you are a person who is not, I don't know who these women are, but like, I was not seeing rainbows and bunnies. I was just sort of like, I just want to be alone for an hour. Um, but I think there's such a strong cultural narrative that motherhood is really magical and that women all feel the same way about doing it. That I think is probably pretty destructive for a lot of mothers who don't feel that way. And I really adore my children, but them as babies was certainly not my favorite time with them. Like I love talking to them and knowing them as people, but sitting at home and watching a baby was not my favorite. And I think so for me that experience was pretty shocking. And I think for me, I did it in the easiest of possible circumstances. I have a lovely husband who's super helpful. Everything went really well. It was very easy, under any measure, and still a really radical transformation of self, I thought. So that's kind of what I wanted to convey in that character and really in all the characters in their own way. So that voice in B is is probably just me remembering. It was a long time ago now, 21 years ago, but
Well, it's something that is very relatable. You hear mothers very much today talking about how exhausted they are and
Mhm.
they feel overworked, and there's just so much.
Yeah, and I've had so many women come up to me who've read the book and say, "I felt like you were inside my head." I think that's one of those things that women do feel but don't necessarily share because it feels ungrateful or like a complaint when it's not really. It's just a description of what a moment in your life might feel like. Yeah.
Your book has been described both as beautiful and suspenseful. So,
Mhm.
how did you strike this balance between this beautiful lyrical storytelling and keeping the readers on the edge of their seats?
Yeah, genre is a funny thing. I didn't think of myself as writing a mystery per se. I was really just sort of absorbed in the story of these three women, but as the plot started to unfold and it started to feel like B's discovery of what had happened in her life was a plot driver in a way, then I think I became more aware of that sort of suspenseful mystery feel. And then it it became really fun to sort of figure out, how to unfold the story, especially because there's 2 different timelines, in a way that felt, hopefully, and thank you for saying so, sort of, compelling for the reader, but also put the prose forward. I wanted it to be, to me, the quality of the writing was very important. So yeah, I think it is quite fun to sort of figure out what to unleash and when for the reader. Absolutely.
What do your students think about your book?
They've been so cute. My field hockey team made me a little poster on my launch day, and a lot of them have, brought it to me to sign, and so many of them have been just very, very sweet and complimentary. And the bookstore in town. I live in a small town in Massachusetts, and you can walk. It's very ideal. You can kind of walk to everything. I walk to the butcher and the baker and the coffee store and everything. But we have a wonderful bookstore run by the writer Kelly Lynch and her husband Gavin, and they stocked my book considerably, and the students have been walking down to get it, so they've been very sweet.
That's exciting. And to have a teacher where they see the book has been, you've got a book that's been published and by one of my favorite publishers, Zippy Books, is quite an accomplishment.
Yeah.
And so, here's your debut book. It's been released. How exciting. So I know everyone's always asking, so are you writing another book?
Well, I wish I could say this was the first book I ever wrote. I have been telling everyone who asks this that I first started writing when I turned 40, because I thought, well, it's sort of like now or never. And the first book I wrote was so terrible. I sort of gave myself a masterclass on how not to write a book. So it was like I finished it and I thought, well, that's not it. Absolutely not. I wrote a book that my agent really hated. So the Undercurrent is not, it's not like it came fresh out of the gate there. And right now I'm working on, well, I'm mostly thinking about, I'm not doing a ton of work on it, but working on a piece about, in broad strokes, love in the modern era. And it is about AI, and it has in it an illuminated manuscript author and all kinds of things. So we'll see how that goes.
Ooh, that sounds very exciting. Well, my goodness, Sarah, I mean, you're such an inspiration. Where can our readers go and listeners to be part of your community and learn more about your work?
Go to my website, which is sarahsawyerauthor.com.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you very much. It was really a pleasure.
Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.